Gather around, my children. Curtis here providing you another Magic the Gathering commentary produced by Green Carpet Media. Today we have a player that you might have recognized in our last video that goes by the name of Spoons, playing the red-black deck Dark Devotion. On the other side of the table, trying to break the newcomer's curse, is Believe, playing the green-white deck Spiritcraft. These two decks are theme decks from the Betrayers of Kamigawa expansion, a multiverse that we visited in a previous game between Boog and Garrus. Now let me just touch on these two decks for a moment. The red-black deck Dark Devotion is filled with demon-worshipping ogres. These two creature types work in unison, and it's hard to have a demon on the field without an ogre, and vice versa. This deck has big creatures that are relatively cheap for their size, but these big creatures come with an even bigger risk. Like every deck that utilizes demons, you're going to have to make a few sacrifices. These sacrifices might come in the form of the player's own creatures or life total. Spoons needs to verify that the sacrifices he makes are worth the end result. The green-white deck Spiritcraft has a strong focus on self-buffing its creatures. I use the term self-buffing because all Believe will have to do is continuously play creatures to earn special passive awards from creatures he already has active on the battlefield. Couple this with a plethora of arcane spells and you have yourself an army that can get out of hand fast. It looks like Believe has won the dice roll and has opted to play first. These players have drawn their initial starting hands and both hands are looking pretty good. I would be surprised to see a mulligan out of either of these players. Believe has a nice number of lands, as well as a 1-drop, and a fantastic 3-drop. Taking a look at Spoons' hand, we see he has a 1-drop as well as a 2-drop, on top of a healthy number of starting lands. The only complaint he might have is trading one of those mountains for another swamp. A lot of Spoons' creatures require 2 black mana, and solidifying that second swamp would most likely put his warriors at ease. It looks like they're both satisfied with their starting hands, and Believe will play a Plains and tap it for 1 white mana. He'll pull out his Lantern Kami. This is a 1/1 spirit creature with flying and can be a serious early game threat. Believe has passed his turn over to Spoons, who shouldn't be too worried about the Lantern Kami. He has his own 1-drop, Bile Urchin, which is equally effective at early game harassment. Spoons has drawn the enchantment Oni Possession and has laid down his swamp like a boss. He'll tap his swamp to pull out his Bile Urchin, a 1/1 creature with the activated ability Sacrifice Bile Urchin. Target player loses 1 life. Spoons will pass his turn over to Believe, and Believe probably won't be too concerned with the Bile Urchin. Lantern Kami will most likely be used as an attacker rather than a defender against the Urchin. Believe has drawn one of his closers, Scaled Hulk. Not the best draw he could have made, he was most likely hoping for a smaller creature, but this shouldn't affect him too much. The good thing about the early game is not a lot of damage is coming his way. He has plenty of time to get his 3-drop onto the battlefield next turn. He has played a forest and will go in with his Lantern Kami as predicted. Since Spoons has no defenders with the ability to block a flying creature, he will take the 1 damage, lowering his life total to 19. Believe doesn't have any blockers, but he isn't defenseless. He does have Tarashi's Verdict, but I wouldn't imagine that he'd be deploying this instant anytime in the next few turns. While the Dark Devotion deck has some beefy early mid-game creatures, none of the creatures have haste, which means that the card will most likely be saved for one of the bigger demon creatures that Spoons has. Believe has passed his turn back over to Spoons, who's drawn his 2nd swamp. This is a great draw for him because he'll be able to get those big demon creatures onto the battlefield that require the additional black mana. He has played a mountain and appears to be giving his Hearth Kami a once-over. I would imagine that he'll be playing this creature this turn. It's the most logical move he can make. Yep, Spoons will tap down both his lands and put his Hearth Kami onto the battlefield. Hearth Kami is a 2/1 spirit creature with an activated ability. I won't go into detail because Spiritcraft doesn't have any artifacts, so this ability is pretty useless. Spoons will trade an eye for an eye and go on the offensive with this Urchin. Since Believe doesn't have any blockers, and most likely won't be utilizing his instant, Tarashi's Verdict, he'll be taking 1 damage, dropping his life total to 19. Spoons will pass his turn back over to Believe, who will get his 3rd land onto the field this turn, which means the game is about to start getting intense fast. Believe will most likely be looking to activate his Faithful Squire as soon as possible, and this card will put him in a strong position strategically. Believe has drawn Kami of the Hunt, a 3-drop, but he'll still most likely be looking to activate his Faithful Squire first. He has played a Plains and will tap all of his lands to play his Faithful Squire. It's important to play the Faithful Squire first because it gains Kai counters for every spirit or arcane spell put into play. If there are 2 or more Kai counters on Faithful Squire, you have the option to flip it at the end of turn. Believe has gone in once again with his Lantern Kami for another 1 damage. Spoons still doesn't have any creatures that can block flying, so he'll be taking the hit, going down to 18, and Believe is slowly whittling his opponent down to 0. However, these small attacks won't last long. Both these decks are capable of putting out some serious pressure towards the mid-game. Believe's deck takes a few turns to set up this pressure, but once he starts to combo his creatures and spells, he will gain some potent power-ups. As for his opponent, we should see some quick bursts of extremely high damage and some turns with no action at all. Now Spoons has played a swamp and tapped down 2 of his lands to get another Hearth Kami onto the battlefield. Spoons will attack with his Hearth and Urchin, looking to squeeze in 3 damage. Believe will attempt to block the Urchin with this Faithful Squire, but Spoons cleverly uses the Urchin's activated ability to sacrifice the Urchin, dealing full 3 damage to Believe, dropping him to 16. Judging by Spoons' hand and the battlefield, you would think that the Dark Devotion was a demon spirit deck, but trust me, there are some ogres in there somewhere, and Spoons needs to draw a few if he really wants to utilize this deck to its fullest potential. He has passed his turn back over to Believe, who has plenty of lands to start setting up a strong creature base, and the more creatures he can activate on the battlefield, the more succulent the rewards he'll be able to reap. He has drawn the instant arcane spell Kodama's Might and will lay down a forest. He's currently looking at his Kami of the Hunt. This would be an excellent creature to cast because it will provide the Faithful Squire with a Kai counter. Believe has tapped down 3 lands, will put his Kami of the Hunt onto the battlefield. This is a spirit creature, and like I said before, it'll generate 1 Kai counter for the Squire. Kami of the Hunt will gain +1/+1 until end of turn whenever the owner plays a spirit or arcane spell. Believe will fly in once again with his Lantern Kami, looking to squeeze another 1 damage. If Spoons had another land, he would have the option to destroy the attacking Kami by playing the instant Torn of Stone, but that would be a total waste of a spell. This is an awkward situation for Spoons because there's not a lot he can do to stop the Lantern Kami. That is until Believe casts his Kodama's Might. This will give the Lantern Kami +2/+2, making it a 3/3. Spoons is forced to take the 3 damage, going down to 15. Now, would it be worth blasting the Kami with the instant Torn of Stone? Meh, it's debatable. But I do know for a fact that the Believe Squire should have received an additional Kai counter after he played Kodama's Might. This spell is arcane and would have counted towards the generation of a Kai counter on the Squire. Believe would have then had the option to turn his Squire into Kaizo, Memory of Loyalty, at the end of this turn. Spoons has drawn a Painracker Oni and played a Mountain. He could play his Oni possession this turn, but instead he's tapping down 4 lands to play his Torn of Stone. This is a solid move. He'll be blasting Believe's Kami of the Hunt for 4 damage, sending this card to Believe's graveyard, which will clear a path for his Hearth Kamis. He's going to go on the offensive with both of these creatures and force Believe to either take 4 damage from the Kamis or block with his Squire, sacrificing it to prevent 2 of the 4 damage. Believe has opted to take the 4 damage, going down to 12 life, but I can't help but think that this whole situation could have been avoided if someone didn't forget to put a Kai counter on their Squire and turn him into a Kaizo. That way Kaizo's ability would have been prevented the damage that would have been done to the Kami of the Hunt, meaning the Kami of the Hunt would still be alive and would be able to block one of Spoon's Kamis, preventing it. But you know what's done is done. Believe has drawn a Yobi, who split the heavens. Such an awesome name. Curtis, who split the heavens. I like the sound of that. What do you guys think? Anyway, Believe has flown in again with his Lantern Kami, dealing another 1 damage to Spoons, who has been forced to take the damage, lowering his life total to 14. As effective as the Lantern Kami has been this game, Believe will need to start mobilizing stronger creatures, and the same goes for Spoons. They've both been playing early game creature, which is typically unusual for these 2 decks. On Spoon's side, we see he has drawn another Torn of Stone, and I'm completely amazed that Spoons hasn't been able to draw 1 Ogre from his library. I promise guys, this deck does have them. Spoons will attack with his Hearth Kamis, forcing Believe once again to either take 4 damage or block one of the Hearth Kamis with his Squire. We're experiencing some deja vu, but this time around might be a little different. As you can see, Believe is contemplating using his instant Tarashi's Verdict on one of those Hearth Kamis. Believe has to ask himself the question, is a Tarashi's Verdict worth 2 life? Believe is going to go for it. He taps down all his lands to play his Tarashi's Verdict. I guess this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the Verdict only costs 2 mana, so tapping down all his lands isn't exactly needed. In any case, he's going to use the Verdict to destroy one of the attacking Kamis. It looks like Spoons has a response. He's going to tap down all of his lands and target the Squire with his Torn of Stone. This instant will deal 4 damage to the Squire, sending it to Believe's graveyard. Likewise, Tarashi's Verdict will destroy one of the Kamis, sending it to Spoons' graveyard. And Believe will take 2 damage from the other Hearth Kami, going down to 10 health. Whoa, man, a lot has happened last turn. Spoons went on the offensive looking to hit Believe for another 4 damage, but Believe tried to negate half the damage with his Verdict while at the same time generating 1 Kai counter for his Squire. In response to this maneuver, Spoons sniped the Squire with his instant Torn of Stone. When the dust cleared, Believe had only managed to take 2 damage from one of Spoons' Hearth Kami, so who won that small skirmish? I would have to say Spoons came out on top, not because he was able to do 2 damage, but because he was able to eliminate the Squire before it became Kaizo. Back to the game, Believe has drawn and played Waxmane Baku. He's going to soar in once again with his Lantern Kami, taking him down to 13. He still doesn't have any real way to deal with that Lantern Kami, but at this point I doubt that Spoons is too concerned with it. While the Lantern Kami's damage is a nice little bonus, at this stage in the game it shouldn't be Believe's primary source of damage. Now Spoons has drawn and played a Swamp. He's going to tap down all of his lands to get his Painracker Oni onto the battlefield. This card will terrorize Believe if it's left unchecked. This is a 5/4 demon creature with fear and has the passive ability, on your upkeep sacrifice a creature if you don't control an ogre. Whoa, Spoons is going in with his Hearth Kami and Believe has decided to take the 2 damage instead of blocking with his Waxmane. This is horrible. Believe needed to block with his Waxmane. The initial trade wouldn't have been worth it, but let's look at the long-term effects this move would have had on the game. Believe would have spared himself 2 life and killed the Hearth Kami, which would have directly affected the Painracker Oni. Again, Spoons doesn't have any ogres on the battlefield, which means that the Painracker's passive ability would have triggered, causing him to sacrifice a creature next turn. That creature being the Hearth Kami, but since the Kami was killed by the Waxmane, this would have forced Spoons to sacrifice the Painracker instead. Spoons will untap his Hearth Kami and lands, and his Painracker's passive ability will trigger on his upkeep, meaning he'll be sacking his Kami. The Oni's keyword ability, Fear, is so brutal in this scenario, the only thing able to block the Painracker are black and artifact creatures, which Believe has none of. Spoons has drawn the enchantment Kumano's Blessing. Spoons will tap the 3 lands and places his enchantment Oni Possession on the Painracker. Oni Possession will give the Painracker +3/+3 in Trample. The Trample in this scenario is redundant since nothing can block the creature due to its Fear ability, making it an 8/7 unblockable, meaning G to the G. Spoons has gone on the offensive with his Painracker, and there isn't anything that Believe will be able to do. He'll be forced to take the 8 damage going down to 0. He's flicked his Lantern Kami off the table and is tapping down all his lands. He appears to be demonstrating a possible scenario that could have happened, or maybe he's just venting his frustration, but he doesn't have enough lands to pull out a Scaled Hulk, so if he's demonstrating a possible alternate reality, then it's definitely a false reality. He shouldn't be flicking Lantern Kami off the table. This was his most effective card and doesn't deserve this kind of disrespect. The only person he has to blame is himself. He had a few missed opportunities and it most certainly cost him the game. Not placing a Kai counter on a Squire seriously hurt him, and he missed the opportunity to flip this creature and turn him into Kaizo, Memory of Loyalty. He would have been able to deter both of Spoons' Torrent of Stones with just one card. This would have given him 2 additional creatures to utilize on the battlefield. He also missed an opportunity to passively destroy Spoons' Painracker when Spoons attacked with his Lone Hearth Kami. He most likely overlooked the Painracker's passive ability or just wasn't familiar with its effects. As for Spoons, he betted the entire game on his Painracker. If this creature didn't get the job done, he would have most likely lost the game. Although Spoons managed to defeat Believe with 13 life to spare, the game was a lot closer than one might think. He was a little careless with how he managed his cards, but in the end he was able to claim victory, and I guess that's all that really matters. Well guys, I believe this is the last Kamigawa cast that we'll be doing. We have a lot of user requests and we'll be focusing on meeting our obligations, but we do have one more game lined up from the Dragon's Maze expansion, and it's going to be the Rakdos Rivalry versus Simic Domination. After this game we're going to be uploading a few subscriber requests and hopefully roll out our Super Smash Bros. 64 project we're working on. We have a ton of content coming down the pipe and we're getting faster and more efficient with our Magic videos, so please subscribe and leave us feedback. We would love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video and love playing Magic, visit your local comic book store every Friday night for Friday Night Magic. And who knows, you might just meet the love of your life. This is Curtis, signing out until next time. Boog is awesome, and you are very lucky to get to watch her. I'm sorry that she's not in this video. And I dropped the ruler.